The following program is rated 14 plus and is not intended for younger audiences. It includes violence, nudity, and mature subject matter. Please know the music in this project is not owned by SC Entertainment. The music belongs to its rightful owners and artists. Viewer discretion is advised. We see Rob playing guitar in his apartment as he hears a knock at his door. As he looks on edge and says, "Be right there." He walks up to the door looking nervous and opens the door. We see it's Vel Hazer as she says, "Whoa, you look like you got one of those I'm gonna fucking kill you eyes. You okay?" Rob says, "Come in." They sit together and he says, "Ragnar always used to come by my place back in the day. I'd be sitting right on the couch, trying to write a new song. My mind would just be consistently going, and he'd knock on that damn door. He'd come in, ask me if I'd done anything good and productive with my free time, and I'd sit there and let him criticize every move that I did, as I just sat there and took it because he made my career big, and I never thought I could survive without him. Truth is, it took me years to realize that I made my own career, and he was nothing but a thorn in my side. And now," Vel says, "he's a thorn in all of our sides." Rob just then goes back to playing his guitar, as Vel says, "Well, for the record, I think your shit sounds pretty fucking dope, so let's fucking go." Flashback to 2013. We see burgers getting flipped over as we hear a voice saying, "Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson!" We then hear a chaotic fast food joint as we hear, "Go! Order 266, 378, and 256! Go! Come on, Rob, you gotta pick up the pace here!" Rob says, "I'm trying to, god damn it! Yo, can I get some fucking assistance on this shit? Someone help me out here!" Later on, we see it's after hours, as we see Rob having a smoke, as we see a car pulling into the parking lot, as we see a woman getting out of the car, as we see her walking up to the entrance, and Rob says, "Sorry, we're closed for the night." The woman says, "The signs are still turned on though." Rob says, "Oh. Well, you might be talking to the lazy piece of shit who forgot to shut it off before he went home for the night." The woman says, "Yeah, maybe you should do that." Rob says, "Hey, you in the right spot? Because I'm pretty sure the modeling contest is down the street." She looks a bit thrown off and he says, "Yeah, really gotta start working on my pickup lines. I'm sorry, I'm Rob." She says, "Carrie, well, I was told to drop off my resume, so I guess I'll come back and see if the manager's around tomorrow." Rob says, "Hey, if you want, I can pass it to Kevin tomorrow. I'll put in a good word for you." Carrie says, "Why would you do that?" Rob says, "Well, because I see a woman that maybe needs a little bit of a helping hand." She smiles as he says, "See? I'm getting better. You smoke?" Carrie says, I quit." Rob says, Yeah, I said that too." She takes one and says, "Why do you work here? Hell, you know more about me than my own therapist does." Rob says, "Well, they're overpaid." They share a laugh as we see her take a smoke. The next day, we see Rob being woken up by an alarm at 6 a.m. As we see he lives in a very small apartment on his own. As we see him getting dressed for the day. As he then looks at himself in the mirror. As he puts a fake smile on his face. As we then see him walk out the door. But as we then see an eviction notice on the door. As he looks pissed and just rips it off the door. We see Rob flipping burgers at work, as we then see people yelling order numbers all around. As we see a man in the background saying, "Rob, yo, you get your ass up there to the window and you serve that fucking food." Rob says, Sorry. As we see it turns into the early evening, as we see Rob on his supper break, as we see him eating at a booth, as we see one of the workers walking up to him, as he says, "Hey yo, Mr. Johnson, you clocking out today at 7? Rob says, "Tesman, how the hell are you anyway? Fired yet?" Tesman says, "Fuck your mama, Johnson. I may have missed a day or two this week." Rob just looks at him and Tesman says, "Alright, 2. Alright, 3. Alright, man, I fucked it all week, but see, I'm sick. I'm under the weather, man. I can barely breathe. I can barely survive today." Rob says, "Nice one." Tesman sits down and says, "Hey, I clock out tonight too at 7. You want to come by the house? I'm throwing a big beginning of the summer party there. Maybe you can finally get yourself a girl, you know what I'm saying?" Rob says, "Nah, I'm alright." Tesman says, "Why the pussy face, man? Turn that frown of yours and shove it up a motherfucker. What's with you?" Rob says, "I just got an eviction notice. I'm not really sure where my life is going right now, man." Tesman looks sad for him and says, "Fuck, man. How long you've got?" Rob says, 30 days. Tesman says, "Well, you can crash at my place for the time being if you got no way to getting yourself some money from now to then." Rob says, "Nah, man. I'm not gonna do that. I'll be fine on my." Tesman says, "I'm not taking it back, man. You get evicted, you know where to go. Hell, I'll help you. Get you right back on your feet. And you know what'll make you feel better?" Rob says, "What?" Tesman says, "Some company right now, brother." Rob looks down and says, All right, let's do it." Later that night, we see a house lit up in the distance. As we see a car driving by the house, as we see Rob gets out and enters, as we see a loud group of people in this house party, as he's just walking through them, as he sees Tesman sitting at the balcony, as he goes up to him to see Tesman, as he sees Tesman and a few of his friends sitting around playing cards, as he says, "You got room for one more?" Tesman says, "Hey, yo, hell yeah, man. Come on. Hey, guys, I want you to meet a friend of mine here, all right? Okay, now this guy right here, this is the 50th guy I ever smoked a blunt with. No joke. This here is Rob Johnson. He's a real ass homie." Rob shakes all their hands and says, "Hey, so what are we playing here, fellas? Little blackjack." One of them says, "Yeah, Tesman here thinks he's gonna get out with $500. But I think so far he's lost about, I'd say double in that in the last hour." The other guy says, "Bro, he's killing us." Rob says, "Well, Tess, get ready to lose a little bit more money, buddy." Tess says, "Hey, man, you're on." We see time going by, as we see there are a good few drinks in now, as Rob says, "I fold," as he then sees in the crowd of people, Carrie. He looks at her and says, "Hey, I gotta take a leak, fellas. I'll be right back." One of them says, "All right, hurry back, though. Tess is going flat broke over here." Tesman says, "Hey, motherfucker. All right, you ready to kick this into high gear?" We hear their voices fading as we see him walk up to her, as she says, "It appears to be a small world." Rob says, "I was going to say the same thing." "Who brought you here?" Carrie says, "My friends. They're friends of the host." "What about you?" Rob says, "Well, the host has kind of been pressuring me to come here, so here I am." Carrie says, "Solid. I guess some people are just hard to say no to." Rob says, "Have you heard back from the application?" Carrie says, "Yeah, I start Monday." Rob looks happy and says, "Well, I guess we're technically co-workers now. Who do you think they assigned to train me?" Rob smiles and says, "Let me buy you a drink." Carrie says, "What about your game over there?" Rob says, "Well, I could use to lose a few bucks anyway." As they laugh, as we can then see, Rob seems to have his confidence back. As the night progresses, we see them sharing some drinks, as we see them dancing together, as he then takes her back to his place, as we see them kissing each other, as we see them both having sex, as we see them sleep together. The next day, we see Rob pouring his coffee as we see her walk out, as he says, "Good morning. Didn't want to wake you." Carrie says, "That was fun. Although, I do want you to know that I'm not usually that forward. So if you don't want it," Rob says, "Your number? Yes, I'd like that very much. And hey, I'll see you Monday for training." Carrie says, "See you around." Rob says, "Johnson." Carrie says, "Right. See you later, Rob Johnson." She walks out as Rob looks happy. But as she's leaving, she sees a torn up eviction notice. As she looks at this, she remembers the drinks that they had last night. As she remembers, Rob insisted to pay for every single one of them. As she looks kind of sad, as she walks away, knowing the hard time Rob is going through. Currently, we see Vel says, "She knew?" Rob says, "Yeah, she knew." Sometimes the ones that you love the most are the most dishonest. And it's not because they want to hurt you. It's because they know it will if they tell you. Vel says, "So Carrie, how's this girl involved in all this Ragnar bullshit?" Rob says, "That came later. You see, I knew my rent was overdue. I didn't have much time to fix it. So I turned to the other thing that I knew I was good at. At least, I thought I was good at." Flashback to 2013. We see Rob down the street, as we then see he's renting out some movies. As he walks down the road, as we then see he hears music being played in the background. As he walks down the street to hear music coming from a building, and he looks intrigued, as he then sees a door open in the back, As he then tries to peek in, as he sees a band in a studio recording a song, as he's just standing outside the door, as a man in a suit sees him listening and shuts the door in his face, as Rob looks sad, as he just sits there on the steps and waits. One hour later, we see Rob is still sitting out there, as we see the man in the suit locking the doors, as he's walking to his car for the night, as he then is approached by Rob, and he says, excuse me, sir, can I talk to you real quick? The man says, I'm sorry, sir, we're closed for the night. You can come back tomorrow. Rob says, listen, I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to ask about the bands you have in there. Those names on the walls? The man says, well, they're on my label. Very talented people and unique people. Rob says, well, how do I get on there exactly? The man says, well, you'll have to audition. We'll probably get you in, say, 5 or 6 to 8 weeks. Rob says, sir, I can't wait that long. The man says, excuse me. Rob says, that's time I don't have. The man says, all right. I tell you what, come on in after hours on Wednesday. That's the best I'll be able to do. And honestly, I can tell that you're not the take no for an answer type of guy, so I like that. So I'll take a chance on you. Rob says, thank you, sir. I'll be there. The next day, we see him flipping burgers as we hear Tesman says, so then I brought her to my folks. They met her, and my dad said, son, you ought to settle down. Rob laughs and says, and what'd you say? Tesman says, well, I said, Dad, you know it's me, right? Rob laughs as we see Carrie's working in the background and says, wow. Well, you'll find someone one day, Tess. I believe in you. Tesman says, yeah, I know, but I'm still partying the last 3 years of my 20s before I settle down, get that gold shit on my finger, condoms break, and then next thing you know, I'm a daddy, motherfucker. Rob and Carrie laugh as Carrie says, so, babe, you going out to that audition on Wednesday? Rob says, yeah, although I'm not getting my hopes up. I mean, anything could go wrong. Carrie says, hey, don't say that. You have just as much of a chance as any of those other doofuses performing in that friggin' studio. Rob just looks at her and she says, I mean, skilled artists. Tesman says, yeah, you don't say that. Come on, I've heard you play rock. You can play some damn good guitar, too. Carrie says, you gotta show me sometime. Rob says, well, thanks, guys. Let's hope it goes well. We then see the manager walking out as he yells, all right, order 57, 62, 93, 187, 85, go, go, go. Rob says, all right, coming up. He says under his breath, you freak of nature. As we see Carrie and Tess have grins on their faces. We see them finish the song as Rob high-fives all of his bandmates as he says, so, how'd we do? The guitar player says, oh, we were flying, man! We got the best damn thing everybody's ever heard. The man says, well, I gotta be honest with you, Rob. That was just, to me, one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. The bass player says, oh, come on, man, you're joking, right? The man says, no. Although, I mean, if you were talking about the music, then yes, it is indeed a joke. Rob says, well, do you want us to play another? The man says, no, I couldn't hear anymore. Bloody hell, you trying to make me go deaf while you're at it? The guitar player says, well, fine. We don't need you anyway. I mean, you forgot about the one little thing that's important in this world. It's called the music. The man says, why, yes, but that's the problem, though, gentlemen. I hear the sound of what sounds like a pub singer or something you'd hear at the rooftop of a bar at 3 in the morning that everyone would just throw tomatoes at. Gentlemen, look, it's a boring song. I mean, I would personally throw chairs at that type of singing. The bass player says, so it's a no? The man says, what do you think? Rob then starts packing up his stuff and says, yeah, well, we don't need this guy anyway. You know, one day I'm gonna make it in this industry and you won't be there to watch it. You know, you're gonna lose a hell of a lot more money than it took to squeeze me in here today. The guitar player says, I I wish it didn't have to end this way. He lunges at the producer as Rob has to hold him back, and he says, hey, all right, we're leaving. The man says, well, I highly doubt that, but there's the door. Rob and his crew leave, as he then just sits there and looks at his team and says, I mean, who let them in here? Our standards are getting really incredibly low. As the days and weeks pass by, we see him just singing in coffee shops, as we see people looking annoyed. We see him playing his guitar on the street, as he hears people from far saying, You suck! Get off the street! As we see cars beeping, as we see him stop playing, as he checks his guitar case and sees there's only $5 and a note that he opens, as he sees written on it, Stop while you can, you suck. Rob looks incredibly defeated as he goes home for the day. But as he gets to his apartment, he sees he's been locked out of it, with all of his stuff locked in. As we see, the 30 days are up, as he has been kicked out of his apartment. He sits outside the door with nothing but the clothes on his back and the one guitar that he has. We see Rob and his band performing at this bar, as we see a lot of people are partying to their music, as they then finish a song, as Rob looks happy because for the first time ever, people are enjoying his music. Rob then says, Really? Drunk people? That's how far we've gone? He gets ready to play another song, but then he sees these three men in fancy suits just whispering to each other at their booth, as Rob gets ready to play another song. After the set, Rob is walking out of the bar, as he then hears a gentleman at the table says, He can walk the walk and hopefully he can talk the talk. Rob turns around and the man says, Mark Daniels, pleased to meet your acquaintance. Rob says, Wait, the Mark Daniels? Oh my god, you've produced albums like Rich Grayson's and Bruce Tillison's albums. What the hell are you doing on this side of town? Mark says, Well, I'm always looking for something special. And when I saw your talent up there, I knew I found what I was looking for. Please, come sit with us. We see them sit together as Mark says to his guys, Gentlemen, you can go get the car ready for use. We'll be leaving shortly. After me and my friend here have a little bit of a discussion. They leave as we see Rob says, I don't get it. Why are you talking to me? Mark says, Because I believe true talent, when it's put to good use, can change lives, change how you live your life, and change your perspective on said life. And what you did? Well, I know an entertainer when I see one. You see, Rob, there's a difference between an artist and an entertainer. An artist knows things, true, but an entertainer knows the whole damn gig. Rob says, Well, to be fair, sir, I do believe anybody could have gone up there and did what I did. I mean, every person in this bar is definitely 5+ drinks in, so we got that going for us. I mean, at this point anyway, I don't really think it counts for much. Mark says, Rob, stay with me here. Now, I can fix things. I can get you from point A to point B. Very, very quickly, son. And I do want you to know, I do not make these kind of offers to just about anybody. You know what I saw on that stage? I saw a damn good entertainer that has very little to offer to this town, but you and your music is your way to get around. Rob says, I'm just scraping by, sir. Mark says, Well, what if I was to tell you that you could do much more than just scraping by? Rob, you were looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of a career in Hollywood. Now tell me the last time you ever heard an opportunity like that. Rob says, I've had plenty of opportunities. Mark says, Well, you care to share some of those wonderful opportunities? Rob says, Well, listen, I'm not looking to become a rich snob here, okay? Mark says, I love when people say that because either you're born a snob or you're not. Money just brings out the honest truth in what a person really is. And that's all I want from you, Rob. Now, getting paid $50 to work at Some of the biggest shitholes in town sounds like scraping by to me. Let me ask you, how's your financial situation? Rob looks a bit worried and says, well, just between you and me, I got an eviction about a month ago. And a few hours ago, I was kicked out. Mark says, evicted, huh? Yeah, well, we can take care of that for you. Consider it a bonus of good partnership. I will pay for it all, get your equipment back. Now, I got a list of songs ready for a good artist, but no artist, no face. Now, you work for me. You let me manage your career every step of the way. And I promise you, after this, your life will get just a little bit better. Rob looks tempted but nervous, and Mark says, all you have to do is say you want this. Rob holds back, but says, I want this. As we see a montage, as we hear a radio broadcaster saying, and there he was, Rob Johnson, with his first #1 single, For All the Fallen. Rob Johnson has been having a big year this year in rock music. We'll be back with more. This is 87.93. As we see the months go by, as we see Rob driving a fancy new car, as we see articles and posters and stations playing his music all over town, as we see one that says, sold out arena in Austin, Texas, NYC, and more. As we see him driving up to a big mansion, as we see Carrie in the passenger seat, as he asks, what do you think? Carrie says, oh my God, it's perfect. As we see a montage of them moving in, as we see Tesman and a few other movers bringing in their furniture, as we hear Tesman in the background saying, well, holy hell, man! How many bodybuilders does it take to move a goddamn couch? Rob says, in the corner is fine, alright? As we see time going by, as we see him performing shows all across the country, as we see people in the audience crying just by seeing Rob's face, as Rob says, it was truly one of the greatest years of my life. Vel says, so you were like, big. Like truly cocksucking big. Rob gets up and looks out the window, as he looks sad and says, I should have never taken that deal. Vel says, yeah, no shit. Your life wouldn't have been so fucking fucked. Rob says, the day I took that deal, it was truly the death of who I was. Vel says, Rob, I don't understand. How is that the beginning of this? Rob says, it wasn't Mark Daniels. Not all of it, at least. Vel says, I don't understand, Rob. Rob looks horrified as he turns around and says, it's because of me. Vel looks confused as Rob says, because I'm the reason Carrie is dead. We hear the crowd screaming as the lights come on, as we hear the music booting up, as Rob runs out on the stage with his guitar and starts singing, as we see the crowd cheering his name, as we see Mark Daniels watching this from backstage, as a man walks up to him in a suit and says, I gotta say, Mark, I'm impressed. Mr. Johnson has been the talk of the town for better than a year now. You got something really special going on with this one. Mark says, thanks, Felix. Yeah, he's impressed me more than I thought he would, I gotta admit. I just hope that I can keep him under control. Felix says, well, that's your duty now, isn't it? Now don't let him go. He's your strongest. Mark's smile starts to fade as he watches all of his fans singing to his song, as Mark then says, be on your best behavior. Our lives depend on it, Rob. Later on, we see Rob backstage signing off some albums and merchandise. As we see the people go by, as he's taking photos with the fans. As we see the last one walks up to him and says, "Hey, Rob Johnson? I'm Roger Douglas. I'm a huge fan, sir." Rob says, "Oh, thank you very much. You want a photo?" Roger says, "I'd be honored, man." They take the photo and Roger says, "Thank you so much for this, man. Honestly, man, I don't know how you do what you do." Rob says, "Do what?" Roger says, "Well, keep up with it all. Must be a busy lifestyle. In life, sometimes, we have to take our time for ourselves, too, You definitely look like you're spent from it at least a little bit. But hey, I respect the grind, man. Keep on keeping real, man. Because sometimes, you gotta keep it real, Rob says, yeah. Thanks, Roger." Rob finishes his meet and greet as we see him go up to his hotel room for the night. He enters his hotel room as we then hear Mark's voice saying, "You did good out there tonight." Rob looks a bit put off and says, "Mark? Sir, is there something you need?" Mark says, "I just wanted to congratulate you on this tour so far. Oh, and I also wanted to let you know that we're extending it out by 2, maybe 3 more months." "Yeah, 22 new shows total here I'm seeing," Rob says. "I didn't agree to that," Mark says. "Well, I already signed it, so you're on tour anyway. I just figured I'd let you know. I was thinking of making it a little bit bigger, that's all." Rob says, "Well, I got plans with Carrie. I got this event that she wants to go to with me now. I'm supposed to... What am I supposed to do, cancel?" Mark says, "Oh, well, you should have told me that. Unfortunately, the deal is done, so we'll have to just roll with it, all right? And just reschedule, all right? Now here is the list of upcoming shows and towns. We'll run through everything tomorrow, all right? And hey, get some rest. We have a photo shoot tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp. Good work tonight." He leaves as Rob looks rather stressed out. The next day, we see Rob on the phone with Carrie as she's saying, "So afterwards, I was thinking we'll go to the Soldiers Arena for the game, and Tess will be there." Rob says, "It all sounds great, baby," but Carrie says, "Oh, you're coming home this week, right?" Rob says, well, they decided to push a few more dates for the next 2 months." Carrie says, "They is Mark?" Rob says, "Well, yeah, I know it's out of the blue and I can't really always reschedule." Carrie says, "Rob, I've barely seen you in months, and now you're telling me that you're gone for a few more? What about your friends? What about the people back home who care about you?" Rob says, I wish I could get out of it, okay, but I can't. I'm sorry." Carrie says, "I understand." Rob says, "I love you." Carrie looks upset and says, "I love you too." Rob hangs up as we hear a man says, "Rob, you're on in 5. As we see him getting ready for the next interview, as we see he looks rather stressed out. As the weeks go by, we see Rob putting his stage outfit on. As we see his PR people are saying, "All right, you're on in 10, Mr. Johnson." Rob looks tired and spent and says, "I'll do what I can." Mark walks in and says, What you can isn't enough for fans." He pulls out these hard drugs and says, "Here, take these. It'll make you feel just a little bit more alive out there, alright? It'll make you feel like you're a real rock star, not this weeping, scared baby wanting his fucking mommy, 'cause I can only hold your hand for so long, Mr. Johnson." Rob says, "You serious? I'm not going down that road. I've seen a hell of a lot of rock stars go down that path. I am not taking that shit." Mark says, "You're not going down any road if you do it responsibly. Come on, all rock stars do it. I'm just counting on you to be the responsible one here." Rob says, "Forget it. I'm not getting involved in this." Mark says, "Involved? In your own mess? I'd say you're already involved. Now, He puts over $10,000 in cash on his table and says, "Well, now how far are you willing to sell your soul for money and riches?" Rob gives in and says, "Fuck it." His PR guy says, "Rob, we're ready." Rob takes a few and downs it with a beer and walks out to go do his show. We see him on stage, and now he's doing all these insane guitar solos, and as we see, he looks all fired up now. As we see, the audience is going crazy for him. As we hear a news report saying, "Well, it's been a very successful year for Rob Johnson, more and more shows to come, and what fans would say is some of his best shows they've seen yet. Rob Johnson is truly hitting an all-time high in his career." More on that later on CBS. Rob and his band and Mark are watching this in the hotel room, and Mark says, "See? An all-time high in your career. You're impressing me, Johnson. I've never been more proud of you. Now you keep making me happy now." He walks out, and his guitar player says, "Yo, this guy is a bag of dicks. You know that, right?" Rob says, "A bag of dicks that makes me money. And now, I have a couple days off, gentlemen. And now I get to go home, a financially stable man." The bass player whispers, "Yeah, fair point." A few days later, we see Rob playing basketball with Tesman and some of the other guys, as Rob says, "And time! I knew we'd beat you. Damn, you gotta learn to jump higher, man." Tesman says, "Yeah, well, I jumped higher on your mama last night." Rob says, "Jesus, what the fuck? Are you in 5th grade?" Carrie walks out of the house as Rob says, "Take 5, boys." He walks up to her and says, "Hey, sorry, I didn't know you were back already." Carrie says, you got a second?" Rob says, "Yeah." They sit on the porch as she then shows him a pregnancy test. As she says, "It's positive." I didn't want to say anything just because I wasn't sure if it was or not. Rob says, "What? You sure?" Carrie says, "Yeah, I spoke to the doctor. I'm a few weeks pregnant. So we're gonna have to start making plans. Things are gonna change around here." Rob says, "Well, speaking of, I need to get back out on the road. I want to make a little bit more money. I gotta bring back more money than I did before. I mean, we're gonna be parents. Raising a kid, for crying out loud." Carrie says, "Baby, I want you home. I don't care about the money. We have tons already." Rob says, "Yeah, but according to Mark, that's not enough, all right? He always tells me there's got to be more. There's always got to be a reason for more, all right? He always explained that to me. He's explained it to me several times." Carrie says, "I don't give a fuck what Mark says. You have a kid. Please, realize that." "Rob, if you can't, I'll call him myself. I'll keep you home if I have to." Rob says, "No, do not call him. I'll deal with this myself." Carrie says, "I hope so. Because like it or not, you're going to be a father." Rob says, "Hey, look, I don't have time for this, okay? Me and the boys, we have to leave in an hour, all right? I love you, okay?" As he walks away, and Carrie says, "Yeah, whatever." As we see Rob walking away. Later that night, after Rob left, we see Carrie sitting in the house all alone. As she picks up the phone and calls, as we hear her say, "Hi, you're Mark Daniels, right? Rob's manager? I found your number on the card he left. I hope this is the right number." Mark smiles and says, "Rob, your voice is a lot more high-pitched than the last time we talked." Carrie says, "Cut the shit, asshole. My husband is tired, overwhelmed, and needs more time home." Mark says, "Doesn't seem that way to me. I mean, he'll be in Vegas in a few hours. Are we talking about the same man? Hang on, is this a scam or something? Are we talking about the same man? We've had our issues with scammers." "And I'm sorry, who is this?" Carrie says, "His wife. And soon he'll have a kid to look after. I'm sharing some worries because my husband hasn't been himself lately at all. because you've been pushing him to do things that he doesn't want to do, and I know he doesn't want to do those things. Mark says, "You done?" Carrie says, "No, I'm not. Not until you tell me you're gonna stop pushing my husband so much. He's losing sight of who he is. I don't even feel like I know him anymore. You know the first thing he said when I told him that I was pregnant with his child is that he needed to make more money because you put that idea in his head." Mark says, Hey, are you his mother or his wife? I mean, Rob could be into one of those kinky things, I suppose, but hey, I don't judge, all right? As long as he makes me money, I don't question it." Carrie says, "How long is that going to go on for?" Mark says, "Well, as long as he keeps hitting number one, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Although, he'll have time to be a father. I mean, they all hit their peak for a few years, and then they slowly drop off in popularity, and then they're just kind of known. Once that happens, you can take your dog back. I'll be rich as fuck by then. And by then, he won't tour as much, alright? But for now, as long as I have these $500 drinks every night, that boy will be out on that stage entertaining people because that is what he was born to do. That's what I helped him realize he was born to do." Did you help him realize what he could do? Carrie says, "Well, maybe it's time you stop while you can." Mark says, "Oh, you're a nasty one, aren't you? What's your name again, darling? I didn't catch it." Carrie says, "It's Carrie, his wife. And I'm telling you to leave my husband alone when the tour ends." Mark says, "Carrie. Well, listen, Miss Karen. I'll have you know your husband is in great hands. And I'll be happy to tell you that your husband will be the biggest," she says. "Well, listen, Mark Daniels. Easy name to remember. You stay away from my family or I'll lawyer up. I'll be your worst nightmare. Goodbye." As she hangs up, as we see Mark's face goes from a smirk to an angry look. As we see the weeks go by, as we see every single night, Rob, Tess, and the band partying and getting high and wasted every single night, as we now see, even Tesman is wrapped up on this on-the-road life. 3 months later, we see Rob and his band at rehearsal. As we see, they are all stoned and wasted out of their minds. We hear a door open as we see Carrie walks in and says, "Rob?" Rob turns around and falls on the floor as the band starts laughing. As Tedman says, "Rip, get up, man, your girl is here. At least, I think that's her." As Rob then gets up and says, "Whoa. Oh, hey, Karen, Harry, what's up?" Carrie is standing there looking emotional and upset as she says, "Why haven't you been answering your phone, Rob? You haven't returned my calls for days. I've been trying to get a hold of you for a while." Rob is on the floor and says, Hey. You want to talk? Well, hell, baby, I know just the place we can." As he points down and says, "Talk to the cock." She slaps him and he says, "Ah! You like it rough. Oh." She slaps him again and says, "I had a miscarriage, you stupid asshole." Rob looks shocked and says, What? It's not... You're not? Carrie says, "It's over. Doctor said it was my stress levels that caused this, and I'm willing to bet it's because you weren't there to fucking help me through this." Rob says, "Oh, you think this is my fault, huh?" As we see Tess and the guitar player sneaking away from this conversation, as Tess says, "Come on, man, let's go. Let's get high in another room." The guitar player is whispering, "Yeah, man, let's go. This is getting awkward." Rob says, "Come on, baby, let's just talk in private about this, all right?" She starts hitting him over and over again and says, "Get your fucking hands off me! You caused this!" Rob says, "Oh, I caused this, huh? You're the one worrying about it. I mean, Christ, I did everything for you. I made the money, I did the touring, I did this life. I mean, Christ, all you had to sit there is just shut your mouth, sit down, and wait for the fucking money to roll in. I mean, you couldn't have even done that. It was not my fault that I was out here providing for the baby. And you just had to go ahead and fucking kill it because you're ungrateful. Because it's not my fault that you probably had a fucking abortion." Carrie looks disgusted by him and says, You go to hell, Rob Johnson. I'll be gone by the time you get home." Rob grabs her and says, "And where the fuck do you think you're going, huh?" She turns around and says, "Get off of me!" She pulls out her keys and says, "Stay the fuck back." Rob tries to get the keys out of her hand, but as they then start struggling with it, as he then by accident hits her in the face as she goes down, Rob is put back by this, as he then realizes what he's just done. Rob steps back a bit, as the last thing he sees of her is her with a tear down her face and a bloody nose, as she says, "He made you like this, and you're just too stupid to see it. But you will. And when you do, it's gonna be too late." Rob lets her walk out as he stands there looking disgusted with himself. As time goes by, we see Rob sitting in an empty house, as we see him all alone playing his guitar, as we see him writing the words to the next song he's gonna write. Vel says, "And why was this song so important to you?" Rob says, "Because my regrets is what I let Mark Daniels do to me. And after Carrie left, I knew what it had made me. But I didn't want to believe it. And promises are the ones that I couldn't keep. So the song was built on my lie. And you know what? That was the biggest goddamn song I ever played in my whole fucking career. Life's a bitch, huh?" Vel says, "So, how did you lose her?" Rob says, "Like everything else, that was my fault." Flashback to 2016. We see Rob and Tesman and the others partying once again as Mark walks in on them wasted and he says, "Hey, get over here, you sick fucks. You may want to come see this." He shows them the charts and says, "Look at that. 20 weeks in a row of regrets and promises at #1 on all genres. Rob, this is truly impressive." Rob looks very happy and everyone makes a toast as Mark puts his arm around Rob and says, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, son. I knew you could do it. Now, let's do that again, shall we?" As we see, the night continues, as we then see Rob blacks out. The next day, Rob wakes up to see the aftermath of the party, as he sees Tesman laying on the couch. As Rob taps him on the shoulder and says, "Yo, Tess, wake up, man. We got a big day ahead of us." "Yo, Tess. Tess, you hear me, man? We got a lot of things to get done today. Tess. Wake the fuck up!" He turns him over as we see his mouth is covered in blood and his eyes are wide open. Rob says, No. You can't do this to me now, please. Don't leave me like this, please. Don't leave me like this. Damn you for leaving me like this, please. I can't. Please, brother. I can't. As we hear police sirens, as we fade out to see Rob just sitting there on the floor with police officers standing in front of him. And the officer says, "You happen to know how your friend ended up like that, Mr. Johnson?" Rob says, I don't know. But I know I brought him to this. He didn't deserve it. He of all people did not deserve that. Mark steps in and says, "Alright, come on guys, get out. Give him some space, alright? The man just lost his best friend." Mark says, "You okay, Rob? I know this must be hard and all. I mean, I'm willing to..." Rob looks at him with a death stare and says, "You know, I wouldn't have said this in front of the cops. But you fucking killed him. You fucking killed him." Mark says, "Well, I beg your pardon." Rob says, "You heard me." Mark says, "Well, I see we have some differences to put aside. Stop by my office later today. We have things to discuss. Someone's gonna have to answer for this." He walks away as Rob just stares him down with a look of anger. Later that day, we see Mark Daniels sitting in his office as he's looking over to the next tour dates, as he says to one of his guys, "Alright, so from NYC to Philadelphia, well, then we'll take 2 days off from there, and we'll go on to the next week, starting with Bangor. Then we'll push on to our Canadian length of the tour. Then we'll go to..." We hear a knock at the door. As Mark says, "Jesus Christ, expensive door. Be a bit more careful next time. Come on in, you're late." Rob walks in and says, "Shut the fuck up, Mark." Mark says, "Oh, someone's grumpy today. Well, I'm glad you're here because I gotta talk to you about this whole test situation. Alright, now, we've got a couple cops on my ass asking what the source of this was, so we can't have that. Now, I was thinking of asking you who you wanted as bait for this thing, alright?" Rob says, "Excuse me?" Mark pours himself a drink and says, "You want one?" "Nah, probably had enough last night, didn't you? Besides, we gotta figure out how we're gonna cover up your mess. The death of your little roadie there." He pulls out a list and says, "Well, there's a few options here for people that could take the fall. Now, don't worry, all of them are believable. Now, they're good writers, so people will buy it. Now, let's see. Ah, yes, there's the guitar player. He's a little crazy anyway, but valuable, and the women like him, so that would be a loss. Now, the drummer now, he's a little risky, but if you wanted to, we could send him over to Con College, alright? Now, the bass player, now, just between me and you, alright? I never really liked that guy anyway. He's my personal favorite option, but he's a little slow if you catch my drift, but people would love it. It's a hot topic for sure, but if you're interested in keeping all your bandmates, I did have one more option lined up. Now, you may have to hear me out on this one, but imagine this. Psycho ex-girlfriend, struggling with miscarriage of her child, kills the wrong man and goes on a revenge spree. I could see the article now. Carrie miscarrying her plan. Crazy story, huh?" Rob says, "Shut the fuck up!" Mark says, "I beg your pardon, Rob." Rob says, "I said shut the fuck up!" As he bangs his fist on the table and Mark says, "I think you should watch your mouth there, Rob." Rob says, "Enough! Everything I've done in service of you, from the moment you stopped me in that bar. I knew what it was. I knew it was all for you. But if I didn't take that offer that night, I'd be sleeping on the goddamn streets or somewhere else worse. You ruined my life. You ruined the chance of me being a father. You ruined my marriage. My work. And you took the last best friend that I ever had left in this world, and you fucking killed him. And it was all because of you. Because it was all so you could walk in on a weak moment, and then I said yes. And you could make all the fucking money you wanted. And now I don't even have anyone but the great Mark Daniels, who produces my music and who gets the last laugh while I go to the fucking funerals and think about the offer I took. You did this to me. You made my life hell. And you're why I'll never have a family." Mark says, "Well, technically, you didn't have a family yet. as Rob punches him in the face as he stands over him, punching him over and over again as he's crying and says, "You didn't do all of this. You won. And I fucking lost. You ungrateful piece of shit." Mark is laughing and says, "Well, now that that's all settled." He grabs the paper off the floor and says, "Now I do need you to pick one because I gotta fill this out soon. And I do need you on stage as soon as tomorrow, alright? So take the night." Rob then takes the paper and rips it in half and says, "I choose neither. If you want someone taking the fall to cover your ass again, say I did it. Say it was me. Because you and I both know that's what you do to me anyway. You don't touch a single name on this list." He gets off of him, as Mark says, "And why would you take the fall?" Rob stands there and says, "Because I'm done. Because this life that you forced me into is done. Our partnership is done." Mark looks speechless and says, "You can't walk away from me now, Rob. We're too powerful together. Hell, I could have had your ass in jail years ago." Rob says, "Then I think you should pursue that. At least I'll have more safety behind bars." He walks out and slams the door as Mark sits in his chair and laughs as he looks at the ripped up paper on the floor and says, "One thing he seems to forget is I didn't say we were done. You just walked away from the wrong person, Rob Johnson." Rob is standing outside the building as he walks away, believing he's free. Later on, at 3 a.m., we see Carrie is fast asleep as we hear a doorbell ringing in the back. As she goes downstairs to see who it is, she opens up the door to see two men in suits as she says, can I help?" Out of nowhere, she gets shot in the head by a silenced pistol as one of the men calls Mark as he picks up and says, "We got it done." Mark says, "Good. That's all. Let the police take care of it from here. Stage it. Put the gun in her hand, leave her sitting on the couch, make it look believable. Good work, gentlemen." As we see him hang up the phone. We see Rob arriving back to his empty mansion as he turns on the news and hears, reporting a sudden death of Carrie Johnson. Police are still investigating the scene, but it looks to be a potential suicide. We'll have more information on this soon, as Rob starts to break down, as he cries his eyes out, and then he turns to anger, as he goes in his room and pulls out a gun, stuffing it in his pocket, and walks out the door. We see him get in his car and speeds off in rage. He then hears his phone ringing as he's driving quickly. As he answers it, and he says, "Yeah," we hear a voice on the other end saying, "You don't want to go down this path, Mr. Johnson." Rob says, "And why the fuck shouldn't I? That fucker killed my wife. I know he did." The man says, "Mr. Johnson, turn around and walk away with your life. This is not a request." as he sees two different vehicles behind and on the side of him, staring him down, as he hangs up and decides to turn around and go home. As Rob looks angry and drives away. A few months later, we see Rob driving up to a church. As he walks in and hears a choir singing music, he just sits down and listens as he looks completely lost. He looks like he's holding back some tears as we hear a voice of a man saying, "Survived the worst, huh?" "Yeah, I believe that's why everyone comes here." Rob turns around and the man says, "Sorry to bother you. I'm usually a lot more formal than this. I'm Ryan Dutton. Mind if I sit down a sec? My wife will be here in just a minute, then I'll get out of your hair." Rob says, No, it's fine. Please sit." Ryan says, "Thank you." "So, you come here often?" Rob says, "Actually, it's kind of my first time." Ryan says, "Well, gotta be honest, you seem familiar. Like I've seen you before or something." Rob says, "I'm a rock star." "Rob Johnson? You ever hear about Regrets and Promises or Forgetfulness, songs like that?" Ryan says, "Oh, God, yes. No, wow. Damn, man. Let me just say, I think you're really, really good. My wife and I listen to you all the time." Rob says, "Well, it's too bad I quit then." Ryan says, "Wait a minute. You quit? You never even made it official." Rob says, "Yeah. There's things in my life that made me realize I didn't belong out there anymore. So, I just quietly slipped away." Ryan says, "Well, is there a reason why this is your first time in the church?" Rob says, "I don't know." Ryan says, "Well, may I share you an honest thought? As a loyal fan?" Rob says, "Sure, go for it." Ryan says, "You need to keep going." Rob looks unsure and Ryan says, No, I'm serious. Whatever the reason is for quitting, whatever reason you think you have, whatever made you stop, it can't be more important than your dreams." Rob says, "My dreams are gone because I put my career first. It's now time I put my career last. Focus on anything else. Maybe focus on anything else." Ryan says, "No, your dreams are gone because you didn't fight like you needed to." Rob says, "Well, what if I can't beat it?" Ryan says, "There's always a way to beat it. And if there wasn't, I don't think there'd be such thing as freedom, my friend. So you find your freedom. And if you like, come on by later. We usually have dinner every Thursday for the newcomers. You can meet some of the people that are going through the same struggles you are right now. Just think about it. All right? Let me know." He walks away as Rob looks conflicted. We see Rob says, "I wasn't sure what to do after Carrie was assassinated. I couldn't prove anything. I couldn't run to the police because Ragnar would take me down with him. So I just ran from everything. Ran away from my life, my feelings, and everything I knew that I was a part of. I almost didn't go back. And I shouldn't have gone back. In meeting Ryan, that was my mistake." Flashback. We see Rob driving up to the church in a nice shirt. As we see him walk in, as we see all these people gathering around, as we see Ryan walks up to Rob with his wife Amelia, as he says, "Hey Rob, I'm glad you came. This is my wife Amelia." Amelia says, "Hi, Rob, it's great to meet you. Honestly, can't believe I'm standing in front of you right now. I've been a huge fan for many years." Rob says, "Well, I'm glad to meet you, Amelia, and I can't thank you enough for being so kind to me. Your husband here is the only one that's truly listened to me for a good while. I honestly still don't understand why." Ryan says, "Rob, come on, come sit with us. We want you to meet Pastor Xavier. We see them walk into the dining room as Rob says, "Wow, this is all for us?" The pastor walks in and says, "Hello, Rob Johnson. Pleased to meet you. I'm Pastor Xavier. I'm the lead pastor here at the church. I'm glad you came." They all sit as Xavier says, "Now I know you're a massive rock star, correct?" Rob says, "Was." Xavier says, "Why not anymore?" Rob says, "Well, Father, I'm afraid of having all the fame. That can kind of get overwhelming, and I don't really know how to face it anymore." Xavier says, "Well, Rob, why'd you become an artist?" Rob says, "Well, my manager always said that I was an entertainer and an artist at the same time." Xavier says, "Yes, those are rare and talented people. I've heard you play. Why give that up?" Rob says, "My manager wanted me to tour forever, and I knew I had to leave before things got worse. And then eventually things did get worse. I'd rather not discuss the specifics." Xavier says, "Rob, the last few times I've asked you about your career, you keep bringing up your manager. Rob, is your manager maybe the reason why you're holding back on your dreams? Because instead of quitting the dream, take your dream. Maybe bring it to a different direction." Rob says, "Yeah, I thank you, but I think it's a little too late for that. Horrible things have happened because of me. Things I don't want to talk about." Xavier says, "Well, you don't have to. But if you let me ask you one question, alright, just one. Do you want to keep playing music? Do you feel anything when the thought comes to mind of going on stage and doing a big show for everyone?" Rob says, "I feel alive." Xavier says, "Then I don't want you to tell me that anyone can stop you. It's not their lives, it's yours. And you decide how you live it. From the day you start till the day you die. People are born to do things on this planet, and I'm willing to believe, and I don't know you too well, I'm willing to believe that this is what you were born to do." Rob says, I want to do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Thank you, Father." Ryan says, "No, thank you. Not many times you get to talk to famous artists like that on a daily basis. Tomorrow's a new day. Now you go out there and you do what you were born to do." As we see a few years go by, we see Rob touring worldwide, selling shows and albums all around, as we hear him narrating. "After that, I went out and hit some of the biggest highs in my career. I beat my drug addiction, I quit drinking, and I didn't do it for me. I did it for Carrie. I did it for Tesman. And I hoped after all the shit that I did, maybe they'd be proud of me. And frankly, I needed to be proud of myself. But nothing lasts forever." Currently, Vel says, "So, you got yourself back on your feet, but how? How'd you end up in jail during the outbreak?" Rob says, "Because my fame, it had a price to it." Flashback to 2019. We see Mark driving a fancy car as he pulls into this lovely neighborhood. As he pulls into a driveway and gets out, he walks up to the door and knocks. As a man answers the door and says, "Mark, what the hell are you doing here?" Mark says, "Hey, Tommy, may I come in?" Mark walks in and Tommy says, "You want a drink or something?" Mark says, "Nah, I won't be long. This will hopefully be a very quick visit." We see a little girl comes down the stairs as she says, "Daddy, what's going on?" Tommy says, "Oh, just an old friend from college, sweetie. It's okay. Go up and clean up that mess, okay? I'll be up in a minute." She goes upstairs as Mark sits down and says, "Now, I didn't come here to reminisce." Tommy stops him and says, "I'm not doing it. Mark says, "Oh, come on. You know I wouldn't have come to you if it wasn't important. It's one man, one time, and it's done." Tommy says, "Forget about it, Mark. The only reason I did these jobs for you back in the day is because you paid me good money. And you knew I had FBI experience, so you used me as your bitch. And hell, you knew my father. So I stayed loyal to you. But I have a daughter now. I have another life I'm responsible for. And she lost her mother to cancer, and I can't have her lose the only two parents that she has." Mark says, "Well, I respect that. What if I was to say, you would never have to worry about finances ever again?" Tommy says, "Please don't put me in this position." Mark says, "Well, it's a one-time offer." He throws him a bag of money, and he still looks unsure. And Mark says, "No? Alright, well, you see, Tommy, I might have forgotten to mention. You do this, and you will, because remember something. I know where your daughter sleeps, and I need this done. What's it gonna be?" Tommy looks nervous and says, "You have a name for me?" Mark says, "Oh, just put your mind in the rock and roll genre and it'll tell you." Later that night, we see an arena of people as we see Rob up there performing, as we see Tommy sneaking through the crowd, as he looks pissed and phones Mark and says, "Hey, Mark." Mark says, "Hey, did you get it done?" Tommy says, "No, he was supposed to be backstage. What did you think I'm doing, sending me in there to get killed too? You know what, I'm done. Mark says, well, sometimes plan B works better than plan A. As he threatens him, "Tommy, don't let me remind you of why you're doing this. I mean, I'd hate to see the fallout if you don't do what I ask, and I'd really hate to see you reading your girl's name on a tombstone." Tommy looks enraged and squeezes the phone in his hands as he says, All right, I'll do it." He hangs up the phone as we then see Rob playing guitar at the show, as we see him doing a big guitar solo, as we then see Tommy with a knife going up the stage with a hoodie on, as we see Rob takes his guitar and kills Tommy with it in front of the whole arena of fans. As Rob stands there, covered in blood, as we see his fans look horrified and scared of him, as he stands there and whispers, I'm sorry. As the guitar is covered in blood, and as it fades to currently, as we see a clean guitar, as he says to Vel Hazer, I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear that, but it feels good to let it out. Vel says, Rob, I didn't come here to reminisce. I actually came here to talk about your manager. Rob says, what? Did he tell you something? Vel says, it's not what he said. It's what he did. Rob, he forced me to gun down one of my people. And if I didn't, he told me that he would line them up and shoot them in the head. Rob says, what? Vel says, I didn't have a choice. He would have killed us all. Because that's what he does. And after, he made me do something for him. Rob starts to look furious and says, what did he make you do? Vel actually starts crying and says, he fucking raped me. Rob just zones out at that point and remembers everyone that died because of Mark. We see Ragnar sitting in his office as we see two of his men in the room, as one of them says, Sir, we saw a convoy heading down Highway 85. Figured you should know. Ragnar says, Alright, we'll send Athena in the morning. Make sure they're gone. The man says, yeah, one other thing, sir, I wanted to run by you. Ragnar says, what? Out of nowhere, we see Rob and Vel bust down the door as we see Vel jumps on one of these skull hunters and knocks the other down unconscious as she starts beating these guys up over and over again. Rob comes in and flips over Ragnar's desk, and as he grabs him and he throws him across the room, as he grabs him by the collar, as he repeatedly starts punching his manager over and over again, as he puts a knife to his throat and says, "From artist to a con man, I sentence you to death, Mark Daniels." As we see several men come running into the room, as we see they tackle Vel to the floor, as Rob turns around to see a gun click to his head, as Athena walks up to Rob and says, "Step away from him, or in the name of my father, I will fucking kill you, Rob Johnson." Rob takes the knife away from his throat and drops it as she holds him at gunpoint and says, "Just say the word, boss. Say the time, and I will do it, sir." Ragnar looks at this and then sees the blood on his face and says, No. You don't kill an artist. And you most certainly do not kill an entertainer. I must say, you've kept me entertained, Rob. And besides, I got other plans for Rob that are much worse than a bullet to the goddamn head. Two men grab a hold of Rob, and two others grab a hold of Vel Hazer as he looks at Rob dead in the face and says, "You came here tonight for the truth and for my favorite artist? You have certainly earned the truth. You remember when I said someone would have to take the fall, right? Remember that?" Rob says, "Please, don't hurt any more of my people. Don't hurt any more of my people. I'll stop. Ragnar laughs and says, "You really think this is about your daughter? Someone took the fall when you didn't listen. So I took matters into my own hands. I had Carrie executed for murder of Tesmond. That story did wonders on TV. People totally bought it. I mean, you got Tesmond killed, so we had to do something. I was covering for you. And then, well, people took the fall anyway. Remember your old band members that were on the list? Well, I got them to work for me after you walked out on us. I said to them that you left and quit. And that's what you did, right? So they believed that you didn't want this job anymore. But they still needed a job themselves. Needed a life. And well, when the world turned upside down, and it turned into what it is now, well, they were the first ones to go." Flashback. As we see the deadheads all over the street. As we see Mark and his people and the band running back to their vehicles trying to get out of the area. As we see Mark and a few of his guys get in the van in time, but Mark sees the dead getting close to the van as he sees the guitar player, as he says, "Come on, we gotta get the hell out of here, Mark!" As Mark closes the van door and locks all of Rob's band members out and tells the driver, "We're all in. Drive!" As we see all of Rob's band members getting torn apart by deadheads outside. As we see blood sprays onto the window of the van. As we see deadheads banging on the window. And as Mark sees through the blood a name on a name tag of one of the deadheads that says, Ragnar Clayton, as he says, "And that's when I knew. Mark Daniels died with the rest of the world. I bet you wish I did. But Ragnar, he's very much alive. And you You will be too. You see, Rob, I tried killing you in 800 different ways and 800 different times, but clearly the universe has let you live, so I'm not arguing with that. Like I said, I have plans for you, Mr. Johnson. They take him and Vel away, and he says, "Put them back in their rooms. Let them cool down. They'll be as good as new by tomorrow. My little puppeteers, they are." Rob gets locked into his room and he says, "It won't ever change. This is the life. This is the life he built for me. Fuck. Athena throws him in there and says, "You think you're trapped, don't you? Well, I'm trapped too. And after what you did, and after you killed my father, Rob Johnson's name will always be remembered." As she walks out the door and leaves Rob there in his room, as once again, after all these years, Rob Johnson is trapped in the world that Mark Daniels made him live in.
I have seen pain resting on the shoulders of your name. Do you see the truth through all their lies? Do you see the world through troubled eyes? And if you want to talk about it anymore, lie here on the floor and cry on my shoulder. I'm a friend. I have seen, but I have seen death. Live to see a lover's final breath. Do you see my guilt? Should I feel fright?